Mhm.
These are the stuff that we had to memorize, right?
So again, morning, guys. So, starting answering questions. This table will be provided for you to you. Okay, everything. Like you don't have to memorize anything. You just have to know how to use it. Okay. So, for example, you'll be given a structure for the like budesonide, and then you'll be asked to compare it with another structure. So you will use this table to say, this one has more anti-inflammatory or more um, duration of action, okay, if it's a prodrug or not, okay. The same with the beta 1 agonists we've seen, um, in the asthma. Yes, ma'am. I would stick. Yeah, I would stick. I mean, are you asking about other groups that are not listed?
No, just within, like, are there any that are better than another one, or could you
Oh,
add any of those on there?
so I'll assume that they're have equal weight or effect. But then the comparison should be clear. It's not gonna be, like two groups which are in the same table that you are not sure whether it's gonna be. It's gonna be like one group that shows increase in the um, mineralocorticoid, another group, another class that decreases the mineralocorticoid. So you could actually tell. Okay. Okay, so let me just remind you, like I said in the email I sent, there will be like 3 to 5 questions, I have not decided yet, on the optional material, right? These are bonus questions, okay? So it's only a way to encourage you to study the optional material, particularly the one that you canceled, the September 29, which has a lot of nice, important stuff. So I could not sleep that night thinking about they canceled one of the most important lectures. But then I thought, maybe I'll use this bonus as a way to, um, you know, encourage you to study it. At the same time, it's good if you miss something else, you have another, if you have the time to study for it. If you don't, then you could guess. Hopefully you remember the things we learned in class. And then if you guess right, then it would help you if you miss some other questions. Make sense? Fair enough? Good. Okay. So starting with questions, yes, Vivian. Main so the majority of these 3 to 5 questions will be on the 29, but let's say maybe 3 or 4 questions will be on the material covered on September 29, but then you might have 1 or 2 questions about other materials like, the osteoporosis or what else did we cancel? Right, so the third, the, huh? Sure, okay. Okay, let me see if I can pull Canvas and then explain, look at that. In the meantime, if you have a question, let me know, okay? I mean, keep copy with the questions. Which material is this? On which class? 927, was that? 27, okay. We talked about prodrugs and diuretics.
Oh yeah, that's the secret.
Okay, so are you talking about the COPD and asthma drugs? Which ones are prodrugs, which ones are not?
I thought it was talking about like lisinopril and all those different ones.
Okay, yes. So the ACE inhibitors, yes. So the ACE inhibitors, majority of them are prodrugs, except two drugs. Remember them? Lisinopril, because it has the lysine amino acid that balances the charges. The second one is captopril. You got it.
Will you give us the structure or will you give us the name?
Always, I'll always give the structure. Okay. I probably won't give the name. I'll just give the structure. Okay.
So we need to know what those two are.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. I mean, yeah. I'll give both.
You'll give both.
Yes. Okay. So I'll give both structure and name. So for those who like to memorize, you can use that. Somebody has a question here? Yes. Uh-huh.
With the RNS enantiomers,
Mm-hmm.
there was a question on the test that was really confusing.
Okay.
This one, it's about so that R, which one has less individual variability, but in the thing it gave omeprazole as an example.
Mm-hmm.
Notes. So is that applicable to all the drugs?
The fact that you're asking if the S isomer is always the case in all the drugs.
Yeah, so that, like in the notes, that's what it said. The S enantiomer has less interindividual variability.
True.
It said it in the case of omeprazole. So would it still be applied to all the other drugs?
Other drugs, other PPIs. What do you think? Okay, well, I'll give you an example. Lansoprazole. What do you think of lansoprazole? Yes. So that Moody enzyme prefers, let's say, one isomer for the omeprazole, but prefers a different isomer for the lansoprazole. So in the case of the omeprazole, it prefers the well, if it prefers the Nexium, why would you market Nexium as the best option? Right. So Nexium is actually the new generation, which is marketed as the good option, right? So it would be the R. So that Moody crazy enzyme reverse the R isomer. Okay. Right. It depends on the drug. So in the case of omeprazole, that enzyme metabolizes, or you will see inter-individual variability. For omeprazole, you'll see that with R. That's why we picked the S and we sold it as the S omeprazole, which is Nexium. In the case of lansoprazole, everybody with me, guys? In the case of lansoprazole, we actually picked the R, which is called Dex. So Dex is another way of saying the R isomer. So we picked the Dex lansoprazole, which is manufactured under, sold under the name Dexilent. So which means that, the crazy enzyme works on S lansoprazole. Make sense? Okay, John?
When you give trade names, you're always going to give
brand names, yes. Yeah, for my material, you don't have to memorize brand names, generic names, because I will provide these in the exam, but you will need to know that later on, okay? Make sense? Melody?
I think we're going to I was asking about COPD drugs.
Yes.
Working with the liver versus the intestine. I don't know, it sounds like structural feature about them that could tell us what they work on. Or do we just need to memorize them? Where they're activated.
Okay, so you're talking about, for example, hydrocortisone and cortisone, prednisolone and prednisone. Okay, so these two examples, in the case of prednisolone, it's not a prodrug. Okay, it's active by itself. It does not have to be converted. Prednisone, okay, has to be converted into prednisolone. So prednisone is a prodrug. Now, how is it converted? By the enzyme, which name you don't have to memorize. I will provide this for you, okay? Now, this enzyme is present where? In the liver, okay? So if somebody has liver function problems, then you should go with the one that is the active form. Okay, makes sense? The same applies to the hydrocortisone and cortisone. And if you how do I know which one is which? You will be given both structures and you should be able to look at the structure and know which one is prodrug, which one is active. So basically, if you see a ketone in there at position, what is Sherry? Sherry is not here today. What was the position? 14 or 11? Okay, so if you see the ketone double bond O, then that's a prodrug because it should be an OH group. Okay, this is position 11. Say it again. Uh-huh. Which one it is? All right, so fine. Okay, so there are actually, there are two positions. If they are changed, they can make the drug prodrug. One is on the C21, okay? The OH over there, if it's esterified, then makes it a prodrug. The other position is when you look at the prednisone, prednisolone, which is, you know, position number 11 as, let me double check. I know it's not that I, yep, it's position 11. So, for example, you see the two structures, prednisone, prednisolone. Prednisolone has a OH, so it's active. Prednisone does not. It needs the enzyme to be converted. What's the name of the enzyme? You didn't have to memorize. It's here. So this enzyme is the one that converts the double bond here into OH, which is called 1-beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase, which is present in the liver. Yes, sir. Say it again. Yes, I'll be giving you the numbers. Yes, so you don't have to remember them. Okay, so you just want to make sure you know which position it is. Okay, Melody. Metabolism. Well, not really. This is just to explain that when we block this group here, we prevent the metabolism. So these drugs have longer duration of action. Okay, so one of the reasons we esterify the C17 and 21 is not only to make it more lipophilic, but to prevent metabolism at step number 4. So it becomes more resistant, so you'll have a longer duration of action, okay? Let me go back to your question, which I never answered, about the material. Yes. Too late. Yes, go ahead. Which one?
I mean, like all the asthma drugs.
Oh, the asthma drugs. Okay.
Yeah. And we have like information on that. This one is like twice stronger, 4 times stronger.
Right. So don't know how much each one is stronger than the other. Just make sure you are able to tell which one is stronger. So, for example, this drug is 7 times more potent or more effective than the other one. Don't remember the 7 times. Just know why is it. In fact, if you are given the table, which you will be, you should be able to compare between them without even looking at anything, okay? Yes. Yes, so you'll be given the structure and you'll be given the table of the SIR, so you could really use it immediately to tell which one is stronger, which one has more longer duration of action, which one is more active, which one has more or less inflammatory. So just make sure you can do this fast, because you don't wait until the exam to study the table. Make sure you're familiar with it, so when you see it, you could use it immediately, okay? Yes, ma'am. Mhm.
So comparing this one to this one.
Which one? This
second
and
one,
that?
Or
This-
hydrocortisone and this one right here.
Okay, these two, okay.
You
Uh-huh.
said what makes it a prodrug is there being either ketone at C11 or ester at C21.
Okay, well, okay, so
But in this case, it doesn't have a ketone or an ester group at C21. So what?
this one here is inactive. You get that? Oh, this one? This one is inactive because it lost the double bonds here and because of the ketone here. So the ketone here at this position, which is 3, is important. So if you have a ketone at so if you look at the first thing we talked about, the cortisone, we said the nucleus is basically ketone, 4 member rings, and the methyl here and the C double bond O and OH. So these are major things. If you metabolize this to that, it becomes inactive. Okay. Well, this is not a prodrug because it's not going this way. It's only going one way. Okay. This has an arrow that goes back and forth, so the enzyme can converse it back and forth. Okay. This one goes only one way, so it's like active being inactive, right? You cannot use this as a drug. Okay. Sure. Melody. Yes, I will, because I need to have everything, figures. You will have everything in the exam as well as printed. So those who like to use the computer, they can. Those who like to use, and it will be black and white printed. No, of course, color printed. Yeah, but there are gonna be lots of yellow colors. Okay. Okay, so back to your question. Okay, so if you looked at Canvas, you will see that, for example, materials that you are not supposed to, that are not part of the final are things like that, medchem of osteoporosis, okay? I will say optional next to it, okay? So what else? Exactly, yes. Exactly, so these are the topics that I will have 3 to 5 questions as a bonus, only to encourage you to read this material, okay? Now, the majority of the material would be on this lecture that you broke my heart and canceled, which is 929, okay? So it has like 1, 2, 3, everything says optional, okay? But it's so important, so I thought I'll have more of the bonus, majority of the bonus questions on these 3 topics. So maybe three of the major, 3 of the bonus questions would be on this material, and 2 would be something else on osteoporosis, on what else did we have as optional? Let me scroll down, just make sure you see what's the optional, then you can ask me. COPD, we have 2 parts. Part 2 was optional, right? Let's see. Oh, this is optional, cough and cold. Remember, antipyretics was also optional. Okay, this was only 2 pages. So these optional are the ones that you will see the bonus questions on. Yes. Okay, I can't remember the breakdown now. I think I have it here. Hold on. How much did I have? Did I tell you I have like? What? Okay, so there is 63 questions, and Dr. Pearson will have 26, which, like I said, he could distribute it as whatever he wants. You have to check with him, but roughly it should be 21 on the final, 5 on the, okay. Good, he said that, good, excellent. So on my part, 37, You're gonna have 31 on new stuff, 6 on other stuff, and then you will have, I honestly haven't decided yet, between 3 to 5 questions bonus. Make it 5, yeah, I know. If that encourages you to study the optional material, sure. Okay, did I answer your question? All right, any other questions as far as the exam? Or, yes, sure. Uh-huh. Okay. Okay. So we're talking about 2 issues. Now, is potency related to selectivity? Okay, this is a topic where mid-chem and pharmacologists argue. Okay, so I mean, you could choose which side you want to be with, but in this, no. So it's, but I just want you to know that spironolactone, okay, so eplerenone, which one is the newer generation? Eplerenone, right? So eplerenone should be more selective, but less potent. Okay, so that's the other thing I want you to know, okay? So we were able to design something that is more selective, but less potent. So this is, I would say this, in this example, pharmacologists win, okay? Because they like to believe that if the drug is selective, it is less potent, okay? Mid-chem, like myself, believe that if the drug is selective, it's potent, okay? So this is, you know, a bad example for me. I hate this example because it makes me wrong. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I don't know if it's an IRAP or if it's a test question.
Mm-hmm.
I know that at one point you had a thing that was on selectivity. and
Yes,
potency.
yeah, it was an
I wanted
application.
to raise my hand because I was like, it was probably multiple, like eliminate other answers. And I was like, I'm not sure on this because actually, if I've known all the other answers for sure, I know. I was trying to sit here and go, I can narrow this down if I know if you're asking which definition.
Okay.
So when you ask a question,
Mhm.
which definition do you like as far as what answer you're going to give?
What is the question?
Which answer?
Oh, which answer?
responds to a test question?
As far as selectivity and potency. So I will avoid asking any question about relationship between potency and selectivity. But you should know this particular example, like spironolactone, eplerenone, you should know that because of a certain feature in the eplerenone, in that structure, it made it more selective, which means has less side effect. But eplerenone and spironolactone. So eplerenone is more selective, but it's less potent. Why? Because there is a certain feature, which is the epoxy group. Okay. Now, earlier when we first started the session, I actually taught you the relationship between selectivity and potency as a mid-chem, which is more selective means more potent. Okay. You will be, I mean, hopefully you will not be shocked, but next session when you meet Dr. Coyne and Dr. Jones, they're gonna tell you that, you know, selectivity and potency are related in a different way. They tell you that more selective means less, I mean, more potent means less selective, okay? Because they look at it in a way that if the drug is more potent, or means it has high affinity, it means that it could actually bind to everything, so it's non-selective, okay? But for mid-chem, when we design a drug, we make it we make it has, you know, more affinity to that receptor. So we like to think that it's more selective, has more potency or higher affinity to that receptor. But again, this is just for your information. I mean, comparing potency and selectivity. Yes. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Beta lactamase and what? I'm sorry. Clavulanic acid. Sure. So first of all, is clavulanic acid by itself an antibiotic? No. Can it bind to the transpeptidase? No. Where does it bind? To the beta lactamase. Now, does it bind reversibly or irreversibly to beta lactamase? Everybody knows it's irreversibly. Why? Because it should bind to the beta lactamase and just stick with it forever and not let it go anywhere and not function. If it binds reversibly, then it's not as useful, right? Does this answer your question? Sure. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
We're talking about the alpha glucosidase inhibitors. Is it an overdose of glucose or disaccharides?
The alpha glucosidase inhibitors. Okay. So what's the question about them?
Is it an overdose of glucose or an overdose of disaccharides?
Did they cause an overdose of?
Glucose or disaccharides?
For an overabundance.
Because
So, okay, so the function of this enzyme, see, our stomach cannot absorb disaccharide, okay? The sugar has to be broken into units of monosaccharides, okay? Which means they have to be broken into glucose, for example. They cannot absorb the sugar when it's in disaccharide form. So the alpha galactosidase breaks down the sugar such that our stomach can absorb it. Now, if you inhibit this enzyme, then sugar will not be broken down. It will stay in the stomach and leave the body, excreted. Problem with that, problem with any time you stop the absorption of sugar or even fat. You guys heard of the LI over the counter? LI, yeah. So this prevents the absorption of fat. So guess what happens? It stays in the stomach, then you actually get diarrhea, and it's really hard to control. It's really bad, I mean it. So diarrhea and gas, which is embarrassing, okay? So this is what people hate about the alpha glycosidase inhibitors as well as LI, okay? What would you do as a pharmacist then to help people take this medication and not suffer from these symptoms? Excellent, titrate. Start low, go slow, okay? Start low, go slow, titrate. Start with 1 a day with the biggest meal, see how that works with you, like in the case of LI, and then move to the up, in a week or whatever the instructions say. These are great drugs, but some people, when they take them like, 3 times a day with every meal, and they hate it because they cannot control themselves. I mean, they'll be sitting with people and then like, yes, it's horrible. This is why many people quit using LI or the alpha galactosidase inhibitors because of this, believe it or not. Makes sense, right? You do want to be sitting with someone and embarrass yourself, right? So go slow, start low, go slow. If they do that, then hopefully by the time they will adjust and they might find that maybe once a day works best for them, okay? You got it, guys? Make sense? Now, I know we have talked about MLN, mechanism of action, and I promised I will look and find what is going on with that. I never get the chance to do this, so just skip that part, okay? So the mechanism of action for MLN, was it MLN agonist or antagonists? Agonist? Yeah, well, Francisco's not here today. He was supposed to find the answer for me. Yes.
two questions.
Uh-huh.
One of them I need to, that drug you were saying, is it Olean or Lenin? The thing you were just talking about, I don't know how to spell it. And so,
You have it here.
no, the galactosidase. I don't know.
The alpha galactosidase inhibitor, the acarbose. I think it's called acarbose.
Acarbose is what you were talking about.
Yes.
Goes through.
Yes. The chemical name is acarbose. The mechanism of action is alpha galactosidase inhibitor.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. But the other thing, I'll actually may help to show you. This
Mhm.
page right here, when you're talking about prodrugs and esters,
Yes.
is this chart relevant to, or are all these groups
Mhm.
variations on prodrugs?
Mhm.
Like, so it makes it more lipophilic or some other characteristic, it is also a prodrug in these
Exactly.
cases?
What do you think? Which oxygen, which OH group are they blocking?
Oh, it's a steric block of that OH group?
Okay. Well, first of all, these are prodrugs because they make the drug more lipophilic.
Right.
Well, no. First of all, these were added to make the drug more lipophilic, so it have longer duration of action. Now, because they were added at an important position, which is 21, then activity for these drugs will be lost, so they become a poor drug. Okay. Now, if they were added at a different position, a different OH, then the drug would still be active, more lipophilic, and it will be converted into another active form. So it does not follow the definition of a prodrug. It make-
So normally there's OH there, and it is that OH
yes.
that is, so you need both OH,
So this is what you're talking about.
but you need both OHs, both of those are what make it a prodrug.
Right. So guys, the esterification could happen on many OH groups. Now, which one is the most accessible? 21. Which one, if you esterify, it will make the drug prodrug? The same, 21. Okay. Now, there are other OH groups that if we use, you could, make the drug has longer duration of action or prevent its metabolism or even have a shorter duration of action depending on what ester group you are using. And they could be using the C21 or other C, like 17 or, okay? So these that use a different OH group other than the C21, do they classify as prodrug? Why not? They do not lose their activity 100%. They're still active. Okay, so they're still active, but they will be converted into another more active form. Make sense? So anything but 21. So 17 and 16, I think they're listed here. So we have 17, we have 16, okay? So if we esterify any of these two positions, but not 21, then the drug become less active, okay? But it's still active. See this here, underlined? Still active, because we did not do anything with C21. Well, this is a product, so this is not here. These here, where we esterified 16, 21, 17, 21, anytime we esterify 21, it loses its activity, okay? This one here also, we esterified the 21. Yes, John?
Could be, wherever the other OH that you turn into a ketone.
Yes.
Could you esterify that?
In theory, you could. So he's asking about this one. In theory, you could, but if you do, then you lose activity.
So it would be a prodrug in that moment.
Yes, yes,
But someone just hasn't done it.
exactly. Yeah, that's a good question. So the same applies to number 11. If we esterify, it loses activity, but we have not seen any example on that, okay? So that's why it's not something you need to stress about. Only make sure you know that the C11 needs an enzyme in the liver to convert a prodrug into a drug. And in the case of liver problems, then you should avoid. Okay. Yes, Tahrir. Why do we give product as IV? Oh. Yes, so to make it short acting, or in case you want to give it an IV. Okay, that's a good question. So guys, you know, there was one example where we actually wanted to esterify a drug to increase its solubility, right? Like this one here. Increase the hydrophilic property, okay? In this case, the drug will have a long duration or short duration of action? Short. So if you need to use, you know, someone, if you treat someone, you're gonna have a fast onset, because onset most of the time goes faster when it's a short duration of action, okay? So fast onset, then you use that, you make it more hydrophilic, more water soluble. Or if, like in the hospital, and you wanna give cortisone by IV, okay? Then you would use that because, again, your plasma needs something that's hydrophilic. Make sense? Okay? Yes, John?
Okay, so the chart copying on the here that's a few pages later, whatever, that chart that's on my screen, is that, are all of those make it lipophilic?
Okay, what do you think?
Yes.
Yes, this is the chart he's talking about. So guys, this chart are examples of drugs that esterify the OH at position 21, and all of them are actually what? What do you think? Lipophilic or hydrophilic? Lipophilic, okay? Now, if you look at the material, they divided these drugs into classes. First, they esterified 21, which is this chart. Second, they esterified 2 groups, which is the next chart. So it's more lipophilic, okay? And then they said, if we esterify 3 groups, it even becomes more and more lipophilic, okay? And then the third class is they said, well, now we wanted to have a short duration of action, give it IV so we can esterify it, but make it hydrophilic. So you will see this chart as the first one where they esterified only the 21. Here, they esterified 2 or 3 groups, right? So you would see, for example, this one here has really long duration of action because they esterified 1, 2, and 3. Okay, this one has only 2 groups esterified. And then they said, okay, so we have, you know, lipophilic, more lipophilic, and then the third class is actually hydrophilic in case you want to give something short duration of action or give it IV. Okay? Do you need this chart, really? I don't think so, because, well, I mean, if you look at anything that's a hydrocarbon here, then it's lipophilic. The only exception that's a hydrophilic is the succinate and phosphate, so it's clear that they have negative charge here. I'm sorry? Has charges, yeah. Oh, you need charts. Okay, I get confused about the chart. Well, I mean, it's... Okay. Okay, you have a question? Yes, ma'am. It's gonna be a lot. It's gonna be a lot of charts in the exam. It's a lot, and it's all you have to do is just, you know, if it's esterifying 2 or 3 versus 2, you know, 3 is more than 2, and then in this case it's, you know, ionized or not. Thank you. Thank you, John. Yes, ma'am. Say it again.
I'm so confused on the hydrophilic esters. Like, when we get
Yes.
an IV solution,
Uh-huh.
does it need to be a prodrug?
So in this case, we want it to be soluble, water soluble, so we esterified it. So now when it goes to the plasma, it will go back to the active form. Okay, but to make it dissolve, like the first time when we administer it, to help it dissolve, then it has to be in the ionized form, in the, you know, these two forms. Exactly. Yes, yes. So that's a good point. So normally when we have problems of the drug crossing the gut wall, we esterify it and then it goes to the plasma and then it's converted back to the active form. Here, we're trying to make the drug soluble in the IV. So it is actually more water soluble, more hydrophilic, okay? So if we don't, then it's not gonna dissolve, it's gonna form clots, okay? Now, you probably should ask me, so what happens when it's, you know, esterified? I mean, when the ester is broken and it's back to the active form, is it still gonna dissolve? The answer is not, but then it has a large volume. So by the time it's in the body and distributed, then it's, it shouldn't be a problem. It's like you only want, when you administer the drug, it's concentrated too much. So you want it to dissolve, but then once it dissolves, it spreads in a large volume. So it does not, it will not have problems with solubility. Yes. So it, most of the time, but this is not always true, okay? Because sometimes you might want to esterify drug even for the gut. Remember, if something needs to be absorbed through the gut, does it have to be, I mean, should it be more lipophilic or less lipophilic? It should have a balance of both, remember? The log P value should be between range. So if it's too much hydrophilic, then we want to make it more lipophilic to be in between the range. So we could use a prodrug. But the same thing applies if it is too much lipophilic, then we want to use prodrug to make it actually more water soluble so it could dissolve in our GI fluids before it could actually cross the gut, okay? So both ways we could, you know, make a prodrug to be more lipophilic or less using the, you know, esterification. The reason you guys get confused because all the examples or majority of examples we've seen are prodrugs adding ester group make it more lipophilic, okay? And this is why I'm sorry, I missed that question.
So since you're esterifying it in both cases,
And the other, in the above example, the above table, we're esterifying, you know, 2 or 3 groups, which made it really, really lipophilic, okay? So they have a long duration of action. Make sense? Okay. Now remember, just like I said, esterifying a drug could be used to increase lipophilicity or it could be used to decrease lipophilicity, okay? Both are ways of, you know, esterifying a drug, making it prodrug, okay? Yes, ma'am.
Oh, so I had a question for Brandon 927. So for the sample, right? There was a question wait, what was your question about the sample?
okay, my question is only
Hmm.
when if the drug is ionized, if it, or in the case of lisinopril,
Mhm.
you have the ionized groups in the duodenum, and so both ionized groups kind of cancel each other out, and that's why it's able to cross through the gut wall.
That's the hypothesis, yes.
Is it neutral or is it unionized? Can it be neutral or is it either just ionized or unionized?
It said it used ionizable amino acid.
Right.
Because it's neutral, so then it can be phosphatic as a balance between both ionized and unionized.
Okay. So the question is, on lisinopril, we had part of it as ionized, part unionized, I mean, sorry, positively charged, negatively charged. And the hypothesis say that because the overall charge of the molecule now is 0, this is why it does not have to be a prodrug, okay? So then she's asking, so would that be considered as an ionized form or unionized form? Okay, and the answer is depend on the pH. So this is, let me say this is more additional information that you probably don't have to worry about for the final, but if you really want to know what happens with the drug, if it has more than one group, then each group will have its own pKa value, okay? Because you will see drugs that has more than one nitrogen, right? And you might see drugs that has more than one nitrogen and has a carboxylic acid, okay? So how do you know if the drug is ionized or unionized? Well, each group has its own pKa value, okay? And then you also have a pH environment. So you're gonna do the math, the Henderson-Hasselbalch equation for each group, okay? And calculate the charge on each group and then sum them up, all of them, see what would be the total charge of the molecule, okay? Now remember, that does not mean that molecule is gonna stay in this state all the time. You might have the molecule, let's say 50% ionized on this group, 50% unionized on this other group. And then you might have another group where it's 30% ionized, 70% unionized, okay? So it's more advanced. If you really wanna know, you could, search and maybe I can help you if you're interested, but this is beyond our class, okay? Sure. Yes, ma'am.
For this one on the package here, the Victoza, is it more lipophilic than the Bayetta one because of the structure?
Yes, indeed.
It's true.
It is. So can I borrow this for a second? Okay, so guys, in case you have not seen it at the pharmacy, you've seen Bayetta and Victoza. Bayetta is given twice a day, okay, which is here. Victoza is given once a day. Can you guess why? This fatty chain makes it too lipophilic, so the drug stays longer amount of time under the skin. Both of these are given subcutaneously, just like insulin, okay? Because why? What's the structure of these two drugs? It's a chain of amino acids, peptides, just like insulin. So it cannot be taken orally. So you take it by injection, and then the one that has this fatty chain will have a longer duration of action. Make sense? Okay. What do you think? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yes, sir. Chiral switching for PPI. So the term itself.
No, because I'm trying to read it, but I think I get it detail.
Okay, so, well, the term itself, chiral switching, means that the manufacturer, instead of selling a mix of R and S, now they switch to one of the isomers. So the term is something pharmaceutical companies use to extend the patent on their drugs. So let's say they have a patent for 15 or 20 years on the omeprazole or Prilosec, and they are selling both R and S, but then they got, once the patent is running out, they know that one of them is more active, for example, which is not the case of PPIs. So this is a bad example. Let's talk about citalopram. Okay, citalopram, an antidepressant. Celexa is the brand name. So now they switch to the S-citalopram. So now they have another drug that could be marketed as a new drug, and it has another 20 years of patency, okay? So this term means you switch from using racemic to one isomer. Now you cannot do this anymore because, like we said, the FDA now require you to pick only one isomer, which is the best, more effective, safest isomer. You cannot do this, okay? Does this answer your question? Okay, I know somebody else had, you guys had a question here, somebody? Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry. Say again?
But I have a
Mhm.
question for this.
Number
If
3,
gating nature was true.
the C peptide chain. Yeah, yes. Okay, of proinsulin connects A and B. The C, does it connect A? Um,
Some people are arguing.
yeah, it does. It does connect both of them. I mean, A,
It's not the phosphodiester.
it connects them. Well, this question, I know it's confusing because my intention was, does it connect A and B as a part of amino acid, and not as the exactly. Exactly, which is the reason why we cannot, make insulin by itself. We have to make proinsulin, then got it. So the question was about part C, the importance of part C and the insulin. Do you guys remember? So first, it does what? So again, helps the assembling. What do you mean by assembling? Like making them put together, or like the conformation assembling? Exactly. It connects A and B, right? Because you have A, and then you have, hold on, C is actually in the middle. So it's A, C, and A, C, and B. What is the structure? Okay, I got it actually. Thank you. I just wanted to look into my notes. Okay, so we have A, okay, and then we have C, and then we have B, okay? So A and B are connected through C. I mean, yes, they are connected through the disulfide bond, okay? But without this part, we cannot synthesize the insulin by itself. We cannot synthesize this part of the amino acid and then skip and then synthesize these and link them together. We cannot do that. So we actually synthesize the whole thing, okay? That's one reason why we use C, part C. Why is it important? The second reason is when C is present, the protein would fold, you know, the conformational isomers that result from a rotation around a single bond. So the protein can fold in the active form. Without C, it cannot fold into the active form. So now we synthesize it, we let it fold. So now it's a proinsulin, then we cut the part C, and now we have the insulin. Make sense? Yes, Melanie?
Obviously, you have to do pro-insulin first, but then some of my group, it was a true false, so I would have said true. And some of my group was like, no, because you don't, when you have insulin, you only have alpha beta. So would you word that like to synthesize pro-insulin on the test, or if you say to synthesize insulin, we just say that it's not over it?
Okay, so I would say the C is important in synthesizing the insulin, okay? Now I noticed you mentioned alpha and beta, but this is your receptor. Right. So,
No, I just said A. That's alpha beta. I meant A.
yes, okay.
No,
Yeah.
but because the confusion was when you're synthesizing insulin, they were saying, well, only synthesize pro-insulin. You can't synthesize insulin. So it would be
Yes, you cannot, so using, you know, recombinant DNA technology and using all the technologies we have, we synthesize both for two reasons. First, I mean, we synthesize C involved, so we make the proinsulin and then we cut it for two reasons. First, you cannot make A and B separate. Second, because the C helps the proinsulin fold in the right conformation. Okay, yes.
So with second point in question 3, I put it as false because it says when synthesizing insulin, proinsulin must be synthesized first, then it is converted to insulin. I remember in class you said pre-pro is first, then pro, then insulin.
Okay, so naturally, well, the sentence is correct. Yes, but so naturally, pre-proinsulin is synthesized, and then it's converted to proinsulin, and then it's converted to insulin. Synthetically, we don't have to make the pre-proinsulin. We just start from the proinsulin, and then, okay? Yes, it's true. Let me double check, read it again, just in case. When synthesizing insulin, proinsulin must be synthesized first, then it's converted to insulin. Correct. Okay, guys, any question about this? Yes, ma'am. Say it again. The insulin we have is just A and B. Okay. Yes. So, guys, in these syringes that we, the vials and insulin we sell at the pharmacy, are they proinsulin or insulin? So the insulin we sell at the pharmacy has actually been already prepared and everything. It's insulin. It's not proinsulin. It's for us, in order to make up synthesize insulin, we must synthesize proinsulin and then treat it, cut the C part, and then just use the insulin, okay? Yes. It's okay. Sure. Mm-hmm.
And in the note, it's kind of different from this one. And here it says glycine is alanine. It's saying that the
Yeah, so this actually, this is the second time somebody's asking me this question. So did we not answer it correctly in the rats? So, guys, this is an analog for the GLP-1, okay? So GLP is a natural protein, one of the incretins, and this is what GLP-1 and GIP do. They stimulate the release of insulin, they inhibit the breakdown of glucagon, so then they actually lower the sugar. So why can't we use GLP-1 as a drug? If you take it orally, it would not be stable, right? It's a protein. But why can't we use it by injection, just like the insulin? Why can't we use it by injection, the GLP-1? It breaks down, it metabolizes fast, okay? Okay, just like with the insulin, you know how we insulin have to modify it to make it long duration of action, okay? So just like with the insulin, we modified this GLP-1 into this one here. Okay, how did we modify it? Which amino acid did we change? Everybody agree this is the one? Okay. Yes, so in the rat, it's option A, okay? Not B. Because I think Tanya was asking me about that same question, right? Yes. Okay, yes, I did not, sorry. So actually, if you read in the notes, it says that, you know, the alanine in the penultimate, which means the one before the last. So the alanine, I did, yeah. Is it, was it recorded saying like? I should stop recording these lectures. Okay, so I'm sorry if I said lysine, but it's actually, and we substitute the alanine in the GLP. This was alanine, so we replaced it by glycine, okay? So the half-life has increased in the case of glycine. Let's see, so the alanine had 28 minutes half-life. With the glycine, we had 159 minutes. And other options were the threonine and serine, but we won't worry about this. We have in the case of the Bayada, we have the glycine, okay? And to further increase the duration of action, we added this fatty chain like we explained. So in the case of Victoza, it's given only once a day, okay? Now, when I talk about dosages, I talk about the most commonly used doses, okay? So Bayada is normally given twice a day. Victoza is given once a day. But I'm sure you will learn more about these clinical cases that you might actually want to administer the drug more than once a day, okay? So don't quote me as this is the only dosage form, okay? Okay, what else? Yes, ma'am.
So for diuretics, epicenic acid is the least of the most effective. Can we just go for one more time over potency?
Sure. Okay. So as far as efficacy, which class of diuretics has the highest efficacy? Lube. Okay. So we already know that we have thiazide, thiazide-like, potassium-sparing, lube diuretics, right? Now the one that helps people lose water the most is lube. Okay. Now within the lube diuretics, can you name the examples of lube diuretics? Furosemide, bumetanide, and ethacrenic acid, okay? Now among these lube diuretics, which one is the most potent, which one is the least potent? Bumetanide is the most potent, ethacrenic acid is the least potent, okay? Now, ethacrenic acid, it's least potent, which means we have to give a lot of the drug, which means it actually causes problems, GI, ototoxicity, okay? So it's not a good option. So why do we have it? Why do we? Exactly, it's the only one that is not a sulfur. That is not a sulfonamide, okay? Ethacrenic acid, if you look at the structure, it has no sulfonamide at all. So in case you really want to use diuretic and you need something with high efficacy, then if you have a patient who is allergic to the non-antibiotic sulfonamide, then you could go with the ethacrenic acid, okay? But then how could you be sure that they're not gonna have ototoxicity? You just monitor them, okay? So you monitor them throughout the time you treat them with the ethacrenic acid just to make sure they don't develop the ototoxicity. I guess there must be some ways clinically to, test people, they don't develop the ototoxicity. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Sure. Potency and efficacy, okay, they are not related. And the difference between them has to do with the curve, the dose response curve, okay? So what is on the y-axis? If this is the dose response curve, this would be dose and this is response, right? Dose response curve, right? What's another name for response? Effect You following me? Okay. So which one of them, the dose or the effect, which one of them is related to potency? Which one is related to efficacy? So this gives you an idea about efficacy. And this gives you an idea about potency. Okay? Make sense? So now, if you want to compare between drugs, if you have different, curves, if you want to compare between, drugs, which one has more efficacy, then which axis would you look at? The Y, right? So if I have a drug like that, another drug like this, another drug like this, another one like that, okay? Trying to cover all the possibility, okay? So let's make this here, okay? Just so we can compare. Let's name this is A, B, C, and D. So which one has the highest efficacy? C, right? So when we talk about efficacy, just look at the x-axis. Makes sense. It's efficacy, okay? So this will have the highest efficacy. Now, which one has the highest potency? A, right? So this has the highest potency regardless, because we look at the dose when we look at, that's it, okay? Now, potency also relates with another thing. When it's more potent, it also has what? Affinity, high affinity, okay? Which means it has strong or weak interaction with the receptor. Strength of interactions. Okay? Does this answer your question? Wait, yes, ma'am.
So like for the quiz question, lube diuretics are most potent agents among all diuretics. That's false.
It is false. So lube diuretics are not really the most potent. So for example, hydrocortisone is a thiazide, right? And it's given in 25 milligrams. So it could be more potent than ithacrinic acid, for example. So when we talk about a class of drugs, lube has the highest efficacy, okay, but potency among the class varies. And you might have some drugs within this class that are more potent than drugs within another class, and vice versa, okay? You guys are running out of time now. Yes, ma'am. So this is a tough one because I want you to know like the ones we talked about in class. So we talked about bumetanide as most potent. You should not miss that. And why is it most potent? Because it has this butyl group. That's the name. That's why it's called bumetanide, because it has butyl group. Okay. We also talked about the furosemide that causes hypokalemia, so it should not be used in the osteoporosis. So I guess only the ones we talked about in class, okay? But if there is some examples that we did not really list them or did not like give examples about them in class, then you could skip these, okay? Yes, ma'am. Which ones? For what? Protein synthesis? So you mean like where they bind to? Because in protein synthesis, okay. No, I think one of them binds to the 30S subunit and another one binds to the 50, right? So no, just know it's a protein. Just know that it's protein synthesis inhibitor, okay? It blocks the synthesis of protein, which makes it bactericidal or static. Static. It's not bactericidal, okay? Okay, so guys, in the pathway of the renin angiotensin, remember the you know how the angiotensin is synthesized and renin is released. If you look at the pathway, it goes like a tree, right? So the most effective way to stop everything is to cut the first part, which is renin. So by inhibiting the renin, then you guarantee that you receive all the effects. But if you stop something in between, like the ACE inhibitor or the ARBs, then there are certain ways around them. So the most effective is, yes, renin inhibitors. Yes, it's not it's not commonly used way. And did we not give any example on renin inhibitors? Yeah, aliskiren, yeah, that's right, that's it. Yep. The ALISKIREN, Ali Skyrene or Skyrin, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. So. What's up, Arnold? Yes. They are not. So when you talk about a class of drugs, some of them might be, some in the loop diuretics might be more potent than other drugs. So it's hard to compare like a class to the other. It's hard to say, yes. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Which one has the longest duration of action? It's given like, there is one of the diuretics that has the longest duration of action. Huh? What's the name of the drug? No, the drug, I mean, indapamide. What's the half-life? I think it's in weeks, something like that. 8 weeks? Yeah. Duration of action, huh? No, not the number itself. Just know that it has the longest duration of action. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Okay. The what? Say again. Oh, efflux. Oh, okay. Yeah, different ways of how bacteria become resistant. Okay, so one way is they develop beta lactamase enzyme. Otherwise, other ways are they have, you know, those that evolved, they have pumps that kicks the antibiotic out. So they have like transport protein, and they use the efflux mechanism to kick proteins out, not proteins, the antibiotics out of the bacteria. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Secretion inhibitors. Sure. I believe H2 is an antagonist. H1 for sure. I know it's inverse. I'm not 100% sure about the H2, but yeah. Okay. Okay. So are you finished with your question about that? Okay. So guys, remember H1 antagonist and H2 antagonists. Can the H1 antagonists inhibit the H2 receptor? No. Can the H2 antagonist inhibit the H1? No. That's why we don't have any problems taking the antacids and the anti-allergy, right? So antacids, the histamine receptor antagonists, they have their own class of antacids. We never use them as allergy, or we don't have any problems with them as far as allergy. And then we also have our anti-allergy medications, which are only used for allergies, and they don't affect the acid secretion, okay? Yes, Zoya. What do you think? So remember the H1 antagonist, how many generations do we have? 2 generations, right? So the first generation, like what? Benadryl causes sleep, so because it crosses the blood-brain barrier, right? The second generation does not, because it's large in size and it has polarized. But isn't this one of the optional material? Yeah, that's the option. Good, but I'm glad you're asking though. It might be a bonus question, okay? That's right. Sure, yeah, I could use one. Yes. Compare between beta-lactamase inhibitor and, okay, so the question says beta-lactamase inhibitors and beta-lactam antibiotics. So I just want you guys to catch the difference, the term. So beta-lactam antibiotics are all these cell wall synthesis inhibitors, penicillin, cephalosporin, carbapenem, monobactams, okay? But then we have the beta-lactamase inhibitors, which are only used to fight bacteria that are resistant. Okay, so those bacteria that produce the beta-lactamase enzyme, we designed certain drugs only for that enzyme, and we combine them with the drug, with antibiotic, to help the drug, like Augmentin, right? Augmentin has amoxicillin and clavulanic acid. So amoxicillin is a beta-lactam antibiotic. Clavulanic acid is beta-lactamase inhibitor. Okay, we also have, so basically anything that ends with a, hold on, no, the sulbactam and avibactam, are these beta-lactamase or carbapenem? I'm confused now. Beta-lactamase, beta-lactamase inhibitors, yeah. So clavulanic acid, avibactam, and sulbactam are the original. So, okay, so are there going to be any questions on the SAR of thiazides? What do you guys think? If there is, you'll be given the table, okay? So make sure you know how to use it, not memorize it, okay? So, I mean, if I have a question on here, does not mean that I don't. I really have not finished the questions yet. So, but if there is, then you will be provided. So the base, so anytime you're not sure about SAR, remember, if you see any question on the SAR, you will be provided with the, information SAR. You just make sure how to use it. Okay. John. Mm-hmm.
Was it just efflux pumps and beta-lactamases, or was there something else?
I can't remember. It's in the notes. I think there was more than 2 mechanisms. I can't remember them now, but since we did not, I guess, talk to them about them in class, then you can just read it on your own. Does anybody remember having other ways of resistance of bacteria other than the beta-lactamase and the efflux mechanism? Mutations into bacteria, like mechanisms that to fight antibiotics other than efflux and beta-lactamase? More, okay, so they have more, oh yes, so they actually produce more large amount of transpeptidase. Remember antibiotics, they bind to transpeptidase, but if you have a lot of transpeptidase, then that's one way of bacteria developing resistance. Thank you, sure. Other ways? So these are, again, since we've not talked about them in class, we don't have exercise, that's how you know when you study, if something you read, but we never covered it in rat or exercise or, in class, then you know that you just safely read it for your own information, okay? Mm-hmm. H2 antagonists, do you think they can block the H1 receptor? Correct, no, they don't. So the H2 antagonist blocks only H2. The H1 antagonist only block H1. Sure, okay, yeah.
combine both receptors, there's only one histamine, correct?
Yes. Histamine can bind to H1, H2, H3, and H4. Because it's able to form different conformations and adapt, to bind to all these receptors.
These ones up here. You're gonna have it. I think you said something about memorize how each of them affect electrolytes. These specific drugs.
Okay, so guys, as far as electrolytes, which one causes hypokalemia, hyperkalemia, all that, don't memorize all these, only the few ones I picked. Okay, so for example, we talked about furosemide, or the basically the loop diuretics causing hypocalcemia, so you should not be using them in osteoporosis. We also talked about, for example, potassium sparing. They are, from their name, they spare the potassium. Okay, so they're combined with the other thiazides that causes loss of potassium. And then we also talked about the classes of drugs that do not affect the electrolyte balance. If someone has hyponatremia, they have low sodium already. So if you give them any of these diuretics, they cause also further loss in their sodium. So you would go with something that does not cause electrolyte imbalance, which is all the Vaptans, okay, the ADH, okay? Yes, ma'am. No. I mean, for my class, no, but you will need to know that later on, okay? So which cephalosporin belongs to which generation? So as you will see that, from first to the fourth generation, drugs, cephalosporins are becoming more, have broader spectrum of activity, and orally taken, the longer duration, all that. Yes, John.
What was the last thing you said about what's it called? When someone is low on sodium?
Hyponatremia.
What do you give them?
So if somebody has hyponatremia, then you should give them something that does not affect their electrolyte balance, which is like the Vaptans. Vaptans. Canivaptan, and okay. Now, if something else could be used also is the osmotic diuretics, because they increase the sodium in your blood because of hypernatremia. Yes, so they could counteract the hyponatremia. Osmotic diuretics. So if someone has hyponatremia, you should avoid all the other diuretics except Vaptans, which does not affect the electrolyte at all, or you could use osmotic diuretics, which causes hypernatremia. So this will, fix the hyponatremia.
So do Vaptans cause hypernatremia?
What do you think? Vaptans actually do not affect the electrolyte balance at all. This is very advantageous feature of them. They do not affect any of the electrolyte balance, hyper, nothing, okay? This would be the future for diuretics, okay? So hopefully, I mean, it's gonna be like lots of research trying to use Vaptans as diuretics. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to clarify.
Sure.
Vasopressin, it retains water, right? And the antagonist, vasopressin antagonist, which is Vaptan, right? Okay. That blocks the receptor that's holding on the water.
Okay.
So the water is able to release.
Okay, so vasopressin is an antidiuretic hormone. Okay, so they actually retain the water in our body. If you prevent that, then you lose water. Yes.
That's what Vaptan does.
Yes, exactly.
So Vaptan treats hyponatremia.
Why? Because they do not affect the electrolyte balance at all. They do not change the electrolyte balance. You know how the other diuretics cause hypocalcemia, hyponatremia, hyper. So these do not cause any of that. They just keep the balance the same. Okay. All right, you're running out of time. Last question. Last question. Last call for questions. Say it again.
Under the COPD,
Mm-hmm.
asthma, I just wanted to, let me show you this, like all these ones, we already about structures, but I mean like drugs like this one, going to like, this drugs, I don't think we talked about the one past like, this one, we talked about this one, right, but these other ones like all these ones.
Okay. Okay. So guys, for the asthma and COPD medications, we've seen a lot of them, and they have many different features, right? Like many things about them, readings. The only thing I want you to know is what we have talked about in class. Basically, duration of action, selectivity, like the beta-1 agonist. Of course, whether they are prodrugs or not, whether they need the enzyme of the liver to convert. So all these concepts we talked about in class, okay? But if there is something listed in here, I mean, in the notes about one drug that, for example, causes certain side effects, or so any of these things that would not cover in class, you could skip. In fact, if you really know how to use the SAR information, that's all what you need really for these asthma and COPD. And these information will be given to you. Just make sure you can use them. So you'll be given a structure of a drug or two, and then you'll be asked questions about them, comparing them, and then you have the table. So you just have to know how to use it. Okay. So make sense?
What about the stuff for 10-6 that had
Anticholinergic?
yes.
Right. So the anticholinergic, like ipratropium and the others, we have not talked a lot about their mechanism of action. We only talked about how the extra binding regions were used to design an antagonist. Okay. And we also talked about the anticholinergics being non-selective, but we can use them in the case of asthma. Why? Because they work topically. They don't get into the circulation. Say it again.
Asthma is not on the test.
Yes, it is. Yeah, asthma it is. The yeah. Okay, Melody. Say it again. Okay, so this is the bonus material. Yes, so as far as bonus questions, basically the general mechanism of action of how these DELZEM work, why, DELZEM, verapamil, and why one of them causes increase in the heart rate, the other ones don't. So 1,4-DHPs do not cause increase in the heart rate, remember? They cause vasodilation, but they also, no, hold on. They actually increase heart rate because they cause vasodilation, but they do not block the heart rate. So you get reflex tachycardia from the 1,4-DHPs, okay? DELZEM and verapamil, on the other hand, are able to block both the heart and the veins. So then when it causes vasodilation and your body normally would want to react with a reflex tachycardia, then DELZEM and verapamil blocks the heart as well. So you end up having vasodilation as well as reduction in the heart rate. Okay. So as far as optional, yes. I mean, just make sure you know which ones does not cause tolerance, and which ones, which ones, your body does not cause tolerance, and why is that? Because they don't rely on the enzymes like nitroprusides. And then which ones I guess should be used as a long duration of action. The di isosorbide has a longer duration of action than the mono, okay? And why do we formulate them in a patch for only 12 hours? Why do we have nitro-free, okay? So this is the optional material. Gosh, I hate that you're going to study that. This is very important. 10 bonus questions? No. That's a good offer. I don't think so. Yes. Okay, you're welcome. Okay, well, here's the thing. You can email me, okay? And if you really want to see me, I'll be back between 1 and 2. I'll be working in my office, putting some more questions. Do not interrupt me unless you have to, okay? All right, you guys have fun. Make sure you have enough sleep, eat good breakfast. Being alert at the exam is more important than finishing the material, okay? So good luck to you. See you tomorrow.
So basically you're saying that